Web3 gaming is the new buzzword in the web tech world. Blockchain technology and Web3 gaming is actually transforming the entire Web3 universe. To explain this entire gaming sector, we have invited a very special guest, a man who doesn't need any introduction. So let me introduce you to Yatshu, Executive Chairman and Co-founder of Animoca Brands. Welcome on 3.0 TV.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, since you have roughly around 450 odd companies under your belt, so how's the day like? To begin with, it's like you are going to see through 450 odd companies. How do you manage it?
So, I have a very talented team of over 1,000 people that help us run through that. 80% of the team is mostly dealing with making their own games and content and production. We obviously have a portfolio team. And also, from a network effect standpoint, people in Web3 don't always need to work through us, because one of the other advantages is that, for instance, one of our portfolios is OpenSea, and OpenSea, really, you can work with them directly. You don't have to work through us. We can make the introduction, but honestly speaking, you can launch NFTs with them. They can help you. So that's the beautiful thing about Web3. It's very openly composable. You don't actually need too many intermediaries.
Since we are interacting with you for the first time, and you have a barrage of gamings. You have a lot of investment in this sector. How do you see this sector going forward? As we speak, in 2022, we have seen the first half. We have seen a lot of traction in this sector. A lot of funds have come in.
Yes.
What is your way forward in this, and what's your view about how the sector is going to transform?
So first, we've done over 145 gaming investments, and of course we have many of our own titles like Phantom Galaxies and the Sandbox and Rec League and Gamey and so on. But I would say that the way that I look at the space right now is a little bit like mobile gaming 2012, 2013, maybe even earlier. And the reason why is that I think a lot of people back then had the same feeling. When they looked at a mobile game and they saw Angry Birds, they said, yeah, that's fun, but I'm not going to play that, right? And of course today, everyone plays mobile games, right? In fact, everyone's playing sort of the high-end games on mobile as well. And there were many reasons why that needed time. You had the technology needed to evolve, the designs need to evolve, and also, most importantly, it takes time to make a really good game. It takes many years to do so. And so most of the gaming investments in what you would describe as AAA games really began in 21 and 22. And those games are all just about to come out by the end of 23 or maybe 24. So one of the things that we believe in is that there's going to be a lot of mass adoption happening in the gaming world for Web3 over the next 12 to 18 months, because all of these high quality games are going to come out. We ourselves, as I said, have made over 145 investments in those, and some of them, definitely more than just a few of them, are going to be very successful, we believe. And also, we're not the only ones investing in the space. Billions of dollars was invested in Web3 gaming in the last 1.5 years, and all of them are all about to launch these high quality games. So we're very excited about that.
So you spoke about mass adoption. Which pockets of, from where this growth is going to come geographically? If you could just explain what is your main intention and focus?
So while Web3 is a global paradigm, I would say we would expect most of the growth to come in places like Asia and possibly also Middle East. The reason why is not just because people in Asia as a percentage are more gamers, but it's also that the regulatory framework in those countries is much more friendlier. So for instance, if you look at Hong Kong, Japan, Southeast Asia, or even here in Dubai, actually you can see that regulatory-wise and government-wise, they're very forward. And as a result, people are much more comfortable and they're excited about those possibilities. Whereas in places like the US, for the time being, are struggling with that. Not because they're industry people who really want to push it forward, but because there's regulatory unclarity, because there is certain kind of fear and doubt what's going on. And of course, the recent events haven't been helpful at all. So that's one of the reasons why I think Asia will lead. And by the way, that's what happened with free-to-play gaming. Free-to-play gaming was led by Asia first, before it started taking over the rest of the world.
So you spoke about Asia. What's your view on India, and what kind of matrix, revenue matrix you look at when you enter any segment? Say for example, if you wanted to enter India, what kind of top line or maybe margin factors you will see?
Well, first of all, I think there are many things that make India a very good market, especially when you think also some of the most successful early crypto founders have actually come from the Indian Peninsula. And we work very closely with some of them, like for instance, like Polygon and those guys. So it's a great team. But I would say that one of the differences about India versus other parts of Asia is that the regulatory framework isn't completely clear yet. And I think that's holding it back. And I do believe that if the Indian government actually starts to embrace this opportunity, because one of the things that Web3 is really powerful is to actually bring people from the bottom up. And in fact, from a market standpoint, I would say that India is a perfect market. If you think about what crypto has done for Southeast Asia, or what crypto has the potential to do in the MENA region, I would actually think India would have the same potential.
So let's deep dive into what the segment is all about. We're talking about gaming, and you spoke really well about an opportunity for marketing guys for the in-gaming sector. So how are you seeing this first for yourself, and going forward as an opportunity for all those brands who wanted to advertise inside the gaming application?
So first, I think the most important thing that most people need to understand, the difference between Web3 and Web2, is the ownership paradigm. Meaning that in Web3, you're not dealing with customers in a traditional sense. You're dealing with owners. You're dealing with stakeholders. In other words, if I own an NFT in a game, I'm not just a consumer. I have rights, I have expectations, and you have to deal with them in that same manner, right? It's kind of like if I own a car and there's a problem with the car, you have to deal with them in a different way than you have to deal with someone who owns, some consumable that can disappear, right? It's not exactly the same thing. And the gaming world has not been used to that in a traditional sense, but in Web3 gaming, you have to treat them that way because the gaming assets are assets. They're not just content pieces. Exactly. And I think that's a paradigm that people need to sort of respect and understand. And for marketeers, that's the same thing. If they can respect their audiences in that manner, they will succeed. If they do not respect them, they won't succeed. And I think this is basically probably one of the biggest gaps that still exist between Web 2 versus Web 3 marketing.
Transforming things in the metaverse. Very quickly, sir, if you can just run us through, what's your thought about, metaverse coupled with the gaming thing, because we have seen a lot of funds that have come in the metaverse sector. Gaming sector is, in fact, roughly around 40 to 43% of the entire Web3 funds in 2023 has been allocated for this sector. Mm-hmm. So how do you see this, coupled with the gaming to, and you were also talking about the blockchain technology, gaming, and with metaverse, how do you see the road ahead for your brand?
So first, there's a distinction between the metaverse, which is what Facebook, for instance, would be pushing, versus what we describe as the open metaverse, which is one that's powered by blockchain and Web3. And really, the paradigm for us isn't VR goggles. That's the way to experience the metaverse.
Right.
The paradigm for us is property rights, ownership. In other words, if you don't own anything in your online space, in your online time, then it's kind of pointless. Right. You're really just a guest and a visitor and all that, and all the value accrues to the platforms, which doesn't make sense. So for us, the real I would say the meaning behind the open metaverse is digital property rights, is you have your own digital sovereignty, right. And means you have rights over your assets, and that's the crucial point. And as a result of that, I think it's not as important what the visualization of it is. That comes, right? It's more important what the benefits you can obtain from them. Right. Yeah, that's the main character.
Yeah, since we are talking about the gaming sector, and you spoke really well about what's your view about the entire NFT segment, sir? And we have seen a drop in the entire volume. Sure. You spoke about it to be once a $24 billion, in top line. Yes. for the entire sector. How do you see this sector will see a revival, and how the gaming NFTs coupled with the gaming? You gave a very fantastic example about how the airdrops are working for the brands. Yes. If you can just explain this process for our viewers as well.
So the reason what happens, why airdrops work so well, is that you're actually providing basically assets and content to the very customers you want to experience. So when you think about marketing, normally when you market a Web 2 game, you spend money on Google and Facebook and Apple, and you advertise and spend millions and millions of dollars. And then you hope that those millions of dollars will give you some customers. Well, you have a few problems. One, the customer you obtain may not stay with you. In fact, the retention rate is famously below 95%. Right? So it means that you're really, really spending a lot of money in hot air. The second one is all that money you're spending goes to platforms like Apple and Google and Facebook who don't reinvest it in games. They don't care about your success, right? Exactly. They don't do that, right? So the airdrop mechanism is more superior in the sense that you're giving airdrops to individuals, which someone could sell. So you're still giving away millions of dollars of value. You can't think of it as giving away something for free. You're giving something of value, but the difference is you're giving it to the gamer, which has a much higher percentage of not just staying and playing the game, but also is someone who actually will accrue better value for your network because he might reinvest in your game or he might invest in another game, right? In other words, it's more empowering for the end user and it's better for the game studio. But again, it is a different paradigm because in the Web 2 world, with performance marketing, it might be easy to just deal with Google. Wow. Whereas in Web 3, you have to now deal with thousands and thousands of customers who own your assets. It's slightly different, but there's a much, much deeper value paradigm. Wow. So that would be the big difference there.
Fantastic. That's a very, very fresh and very amazing view coming in from such a industry leader. Means a lot. Can you just recommend something for the 3.0 TV since we are in the media segment? How in this gaming, can you just recommend a strategy for us? How we can popularize ourselves going forward?
Well, from an industry standpoint, I would say perhaps one of the easiest points, so we gave a TED talk around the open metaverse. It's only 10 minutes. I would recommend people to watch that. It's called, I think, The Dream of Digital Property Rights. The reason why I think it's a good talk is it's short and it gets to the point. It doesn't really talk about technology, it just talks about the meaning behind it all and shares some stats. A lot of people have misconceptions about Web3 and blockchain because they think of crypto and think of Bitcoin, which is an element of it, but isn't really what it's all about, right? What the open metaverse and Web3 is all about is a form of ownership. It's a form of stakeholder rights. In other words, all of us as end users, we actually are the ones that create value to the internet. We make the internet. So why shouldn't we own a piece of it? That's really what it means.
Yeah. And one last thing, you spoke about the digital property rights and the land which we buy inside the metaverse.
Yes.
And the gaming sector is coupled. The entire segment is attached to it.
Yes.
So how do you see this as a? I mean, we have when it started, it was a big success, but now it has come. I mean, there are no signs of pickup. So how do you see, sir?
So I would disagree with that. I mean, first of all, yes, there's obviously it's less market than before. However, it's still performing. As I said earlier, the economies and the sizes, the whole Web3 space is still $1 trillion space, right? There's still billions of dollars transacted in both NFTs as well as in sort of tokens in the open metaverse. So by any stretch, I wouldn't call it negative. What I would say though is that because capitalism is embedded in Web3, you have all the capitalist effects. In other words, you have boom and bust, which you have in the real economy, right? We're going through one right now in the physical economy, and in the metaverse, you have exactly the same thing. So where you have capitalism, you have these capitalist effects, and so we think it is a part of the system, and obviously we have to navigate them and we have to manage them well, and this is where governments and regulation come in as well. But basically, I don't think what we're seeing right now is unhealthy in the sense that I think it's just part of market development. Think about the evolution of capitalism over the last hundreds of years. They've also went through these cycles before they got into a balance. Same thing.
Last few questions, sir. There are a lot of broader concern as far as the cybersecurity is concerned. We have seen something happening with the Axie Infinity. So how do you see this, as a big concern for your sector, and how are you going to tackle it, and what's the status on that?
Well, generally, I would say cybersecurity has gotten better just because of the fact that as there's more hacks and people are more sort of careful about this stuff. What happened with Axie in particular was unfortunate, but they've navigated it very well and they've been very responsible about it. So I think that's not an issue. And I think you can see how responsible actors deal with it and how irresponsible actors deal with it. So certainly Axie has done a great job around that. But generally speaking, most of it has to do with also education. I think one of the challenges that people have is that we've gotten so used to outsourcing our security that we basically tell that we expect everyone else to do it for us. But in reality, we are also responsible for our own security. We have to also watch out for our own assets. I mean, it's like, you have to watch out not to get run over by a car in the same way. So as a result, why don't you look out for your digital assets, and why don't you have a hardware wallet? Most of the personal hacks happen because they're still using MetaMask and they're putting all of their assets in a hot wallet. That's not a good idea, for instance. But I think, again, this is where regulation comes in as well. And this is basically where things like, where do you keep your assets? Who's your custodian? And for instance, in places like Hong Kong, for instance, and even I think in UAE and so on, you're starting to get to sort of regulated custodial platforms that provide you that security. So we think that's another way in which you can give more safety to the consumer.
Fantastic. And what's your the advice for all those who are watching you on the 3.0 TV, and your last piece of advice as far as the blockchain ecosystem is going to transform, and what do you think? Say for example, you are eyeing a growth target 1 year, 2 years down the line. Which pockets you see that performing going forward?
So for ourselves, I mean, we're building a lot in gaming. We're also building a lot in education. But I would say one thing that I think for the audience, the 3.0 audience, that is important to understand is you see something that most of the world doesn't see right now. So you are still in the minority. And I think acknowledging that you're in the minority means you have a responsibility. That is, you need to help educate other people as well. And sometimes, and I would say I'm guilty of it too, is when we say you're Web 2 and I'm Web 3, are we kind of saying that we're better than them? And while maybe you feel that, but actually that's not a good way to bring people on, right? So I think a little bit of humility and empathy and understanding that actually we are still living in our own bubble, and in how we include more people is to basically be more embracing and be more welcoming and be more friendlier, I think would help.
All right, thank you so much for giving your views and sharing your views on 3.0 TV. I wish you all the best for your future projects going forward, and this is going to transform your brand as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.